the Tony Rackauckas, Todd Spitzer, and that breakdown with the Brett Murdoch vote. I think you said that it could break that's an anti-Tony vote that will go for Todd. On the other hand, if it's just Democrats, Tony's always done pretty well with Democrats. He gets Democrat lawyers to support him. In fact, sometimes the Republicans get a little upset because they think Tony's a little too ecumenical and and he's not partisan enough. So is that kind of what's your sense of that vote?
It's not really a concern of ours because, again, it was not so much that folks were moving to Brett Murdoch because they love Brett Murdoch. It was more they were looking for a home other than the incumbent. And so our job is to just remind
Well, that would argue that those are really anti-Tony people that just, that maybe they're Democrats who are anti-Tony. And so then presumably they'll go with Todd.
Pick your poison. They're not going with the incumbent. And so we like our position. You add on top of that Spitzer is a phenomenal fundraiser. And running in these countywide races, it really is about money because you got to get your message out.
So, here's the other thing, John. The other thing that I noticed, though, curious for your take, is that during the campaigning of the last couple months, it seemed as if Rackauckas was kind of just staying on the sidelines. I didn't really see Rackauckas actively campaign. A part of me is wondering if maybe his internal polling was showing that he wasn't going to be able to break the 51%. So hey, maybe I'll just stay on the sidelines and then you just wait till the general, and then perhaps he's going to put the foot on the pedal a little bit more this summer and fall.
Well, what we were seeing was, number one, he spent over $400,000 this round. If he was just completely putting the brakes, he would have held his powder. So I don't think that's true. The other is, here's a guy who was avoiding debates with Spitzer. He was hiding because Spitzer's a tough character to campaign against. I mean, he will say the things that you don't want your opponent to say.
You don't really want to go up to him in a restaurant either. Inside joke.
But the reality is, I think Rackauckas was in hiding, hoping that his incumbency and ballot title would give him a stronger showing than he did. And being in the high 30s is not a great place for a 20-year incumbent.
So I of course want to see them debate. I want to see them debate on this show. What do you think the odds are that Tony will debate in the general?
Slim to none. I mean, we challenged him in the primary to debates. He wouldn't accept it. Look, desperate times call for desperate measures. Maybe he does, but I think what we're going to see this round is he's going to use his office to throw arrows and grenades at Spitzer, but I think largely everything must be scripted for him because he can't afford a moment where Todd puts him back on his heels, and then that becomes our campaign commercials.
Yeah, Rick, I think Tony will end up doing it because he'll have no choice. Because of Spitzer's strong performance, it's just going to help build momentum in terms of fundraising and in terms of support. I think Tony will have no choice.
I can't wait for that. I hope you're right.
And it's going to be interesting. Tony did run, correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't see much negative on Todd. I saw Tony running, we're with Tony. Tony's the lawman, Tony's solid. Will he keep that up, or in the general, are you bracing for, Todd throwing handcuffs on people, pulling his gun out, all those kinds of things? Do you think you'll start to see the negative stuff?
Yeah, they did a lot of negative work in their press department, so a lot of negative press releases that they kept hitting us with. I think it's going to be a function of budget and what he's able to raise. If he has budget, absolutely he's going to come at us with everything he's got. We're ready for it. It's one of those things where these kind of elections, although, look, Todd, in my opinion, is very well qualified. He was prosecutor of the year, et cetera, longtime elected official. This is not about Todd Spitzer. This really is a race of whether or not voters think Tony Rackauckas deserves 4 more years, and by the results of primary night, doesn't look so good for him.
The other thing I'd add, and Spitzer actually disagreed with me in a recent Voice of OC article, is that in the public opinion research that we've been doing in Orange County, crime isn't considered a major problem in county residents' minds as it was back in the 90s and in the early 2000s. Todd commented in the Voice of OC article that's not true. His internal polling shows people feel less safe. So I wonder if that will hurt Todd a little bit because, Todd's going to need a signature issue to kind of run on. And if Tony can argue, well, I'm keeping everybody safe, maybe that will help Tony.
Yeah, well, I know why he said that because that was my poll. And our poll said 2/3 of residents feel less safe now than they did 2 years years ago, and that perception, for me, it doesn't matter how they felt compared to 10 years ago. They feel less safe for whatever reason. Maybe it's because homelessness is getting out of control, whatever it is. We're using that issue as a wedge, and then you add on top of it, there's the junkets hits. You know, we sent out mailers on that. The scandals, the grand jury reports. You know, we've got, in this race, as a consultant, I've gotten an abundance of hits. It's about selecting the right ones and then delivering those.
Let me put you on the spot a little, John, and if you don't like to reveal internal polling, that's fine. How does the snitch scandal poll? I just get a sense that that is something people like us talk about, and it doesn't really make it down to the voter. They don't understand it. They don't really see what the problem was. You know, it's more like the judges or the legal system are letting these guys, you know, get new trials. It's not Tony's fault. Am I wrong about that? What is your
Well, since we're
polling
just
show?
among friends.
Yeah. and our open mind.
Right. Here's what we're seeing. It is a convoluted issue. It's complicated.
Right.
So we try not to get bogged down in those issues. But what voters clearly do care about, they care about the fact that what the judge said is or victims have said, I wish the DA had the integrity not to cheat. And the issue of delayed justice for the victims of Scott DeCry pulls off the charts. That it took 6 years and the death penalty was taken off the case.
And do they blame Tony for that?
That's our job, to remind them.
Okay, all right.
And you know, Rick, on that note, I'm surprised that Don Barnes, the sheriff candidate, did so well. I mean, you know, we're in the aftermath of the snitch scandal. We're in the aftermath of these 3 crazy inmates escaping out of the Orange County jail, and he ran as the establishment guy. He was here on your show a couple weeks ago, just saying, kind of a Teflon approach to every issue.
As we speak, it appears that right now he's over 50%, which means he may not have to run in the general, but there's still a lot of votes to go, so it's not a slam dunk yet.
But it really, to me, I love looking at those 2 races because it speaks to the power of the ballot title, unless people have a preconceived notion about the office holder.
Yeah.
In the case of Don Barnes, he was a nameless undersheriff and he had a good ballot title, and so he succeeded. In the case of Tony Rackauckas, not a week goes by that Tony Rackauckas is not in the headlines for something bad.
This isn't a strictly campaign question, but I'm kind of curious your opinion. I thought it was a little odd that all of the heat on the snitch scandal wound up with the DA. And almost nothing on the sheriff, although Sandra Hutchins decided, who had been very popular, decided not to seek re-election. It could be she's retirement age, she's got plenty of pensions, and why do I need this, you know? So, but nonetheless, she had been talking about running again, so she stepped down, all right? But no heat on the sheriff, the undersheriff, you know, and I thought that, I mean, did you find that kind of curious that everything came down on Tony and nothing, and this really, when you get down to it, this was more, I would argue, a law enforcement thing in the jail. The deputies are in charge of the jail. Police chiefs are coming in saying, we want you to, you know, get a snitch on this guy or that guy, and yet it all came onto the DA.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. On the one hand, I think it's because the sheriff decided to not seek re-elect, so people backed off. But the other is, the sheriff does not have a long history like the DA does of cheating and playing fast and loose with the rules. So this is part of a pattern of scandals and cheating that Tony has had.
If you take away the snitch scandal, how much cheating do you have in Tony's past?
Well, I mean, we saw just when Todd Spitzer launched his campaign that the DA's office was investigating Todd Spitzer and didn't see that to be a conflict, not to kick to the AG. I mean, investigate the mayor of Santa Ana and who's he let off the hook and then is one of his lead fundraisers.
Well, that's something else. I'm just saying cheating is one thing. I get that. If you're saying Tony's lax on prosecuting people in power, that has been one of the but that's not what the snitch scandal suggests is corruption, just outright corruption. But anyways, gentlemen, we have gone a long time here. Excellent as always. Thanks John. Thanks, Michael. You guys know your stuff. I love having you on.
Thanks for having us.
Always a pleasure.